I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Transparent Enterprise Through the Co-Managed IT Proposition. My name is Arlene Itori, and I'm a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with HCL. I'll be working in the background to help answer any technical or general questions that you may have, but before we begin, I'd like to quickly tell you about a few tools that you'll be able to use throughout today's session. First, we encourage you at any time during the presentation to submit your questions to today's speaker. To do this, click on the questions box, type your question in the space provided, and click on the Submit button. During today's presentation, we'll be asking poll questions to get to know you better and to help ensure that the content is relevant to your specific needs. When the poll appears, be sure to select the answer that best fits each question. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be receiving a follow-up email in approximately 2 days, which will include a link with today's recorded webinar. The webinar recording will also be available at outsourcing.com. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to our moderator, Frank Casal, founder and CEO of the Outsourcing Institute, for the formal introduction of today's speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you for arranging for today's session, and welcome all to our presentation and discussion today. The topic is focused specifically in the consumer goods vertical. For those of you familiar with HCL, they have a great reputation in the outsourcing space and certainly doing innovative deals. Our focus here for the purpose of today's discussion will not only be within the consumer and packaged goods arena, but also really emphasizing on how one can outsource but not necessarily abdicate, if you will, with the focus being on retaining control and visibility. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I've seen slides for today, and I think we have a good discussion here. Just a quick commercial on OI for the few of you who may not be members or may be new to our network. You probably found us through outsourcing.com. We have over 70,000 members globally. Most of you typically come to us for trends or best practices. There's an array of services that we provide both to buyers, advisors, and providers. And a couple particular things I want to mention that are not on the slide, just some recent information if you haven't seen the news release. We have a road show in New York December 5th. Focuses on relationship management and governance. We have a conference March 13th, also in New York, March 13th, 2013, entitled Wall Street Tech. The focus there really being on what we're calling T5. It's an expanded focus, including outsourcing, big data, cloud computing, mobility, and security. So a lot of buzz being created around that as well. So if you're part of our network, you'll be notified on those two gatherings. So thank you for that, Oli. Next slide, please. So today's presentation will be delivered by Vijay Iyer. Vijay is a Vice President, Global Head in the CPG retail and commercial space for HCL. Vijay's worn a variety of hats over at HCL. I personally know that, knows this space, has spent many years in a client-facing role, so understands client needs, understands the ITO and BPO space, and certainly had his hands on many handful, if you will, of innovative deals. Vijay, maybe you can talk a little bit to your background as well, just to set context for today's discussion.
Thank you, Frank. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Well, as Frank mentioned, I've worn several hats, but one of the most passionate one has been around, IT services. And I was, 12 years back, I was on the other side of the table receiving IT services as a head of IT for a large organization. And when I came to this side of the table to provide consulting services, I realized that, there are different models, and the two agenda of a provider and the end customer wasn't matching. and therefore one of my key areas was to pioneer this new model that brings a balance between the two organizations, as well as focusing the efforts on end user and consumer empowerment. So that's pretty much what I will talk about today. You'll hear about it and you can ask a lot of questions. So moving on, I'd like to introduce HCL first and then go over what is this whole new proposition all about, and then we can get into a Q&A. Introducing HCL, we are a $6.2 billion company with presence in 31 countries with over 90,000 people around the world. And our service lines include all major IT and BPO services, which includes enterprise applications, custom applications, as well as infrastructure services and product engineering services. And we operate our go-to-market strategies through industry domain, across financial services, manufacturing, retail, CPG, media, entertainment, healthcare, and public services. So what you will notice is that we are not very different from other service providers in the IT space around what we do, but we are very different in how we deliver our services, which is why our core philosophies are around empowering and enabling our employees and focusing on creating trust through transparency and flexibility, and differentiating around value creation for our customers. So if you Google employees first, you will hit HCL. If you Google trust, transparency, and flexibility as a core together, you will see what makes HCL different. So to that extent, we are known in the marketplace for focusing on our employees, who in turn focus their entire attention on creating value for our customers. Moving on to the next slide, you will see how we are focusing on alternatives, therefore, to provide our services. Since our customers' businesses are changing, you yourself are changing, your businesses are changing, your technology landscape is changing due to emerging new technologies like mobility, cloud, etc. We want to provide alternative engagement models, alternative service propositions, alternative delivery models, alternative business-aligned IT framework, and alternative management approach. There's no reason why HCL's Employee First is taught as a case study at Harvard, London Business Schools, etc., because it provides the alternative. It provides the right set mindset in the services organization in order to deliver those changes. Now we're going to go have a poll question and probably pause for a few minutes for you to respond to this poll. You got to select one of these in terms of what would you consider as your number one requirement from your partner or service provider. Is it cultural fit? Is it flexibility? Is it domain or industry capability? Or is it price competitiveness? Probably hang on for a minute or so before we see a quick poll result.
Let's see how candid everyone really is, Vijay.
Yeah, because you got to select one of these, and it is tough.
It's a tough one.
That's true. What is that one criteria that most customers look for? And then I've seen in the previous poll, it's changed. Wow. So you see flexibility and industry domain capability, being equal, and you have price competitiveness, and then the cultural fit. Now, if you see the next slide, Arlene, you'll see that HCL is rated highest in all of them. This is a survey study conducted by Forrester on applications outsourcing. And we've been rated #1 across several parameters in the client reference score. So if you do choose HCL, you don't have to make that tough compromise of choosing one of the best. You do have all of them come in a bundle, plus a lot more, as you see in this particular slide. Moving on to the next slide, now I'm going to talk about what created that differentiation or what created that wow in our customers. We incorporated our fundamental philosophy of creating transparency in our applications management and outsourcing offerings to develop a collaboratively managed IT proposition, and which is what we call co-managed IT. Now, why did we create this co-managed IT? You see here, the sourcing needs for customers are fairly clear. Our strategic intelligence wing conducted a study across 76 CIOs, VP, and director of IT, and wanted to understand what do the customers want. And predominantly, all of them wanted to focus on their core business, wanted to provide innovation to their business, to their end consumers. At the same time, they wanted to ensure control and visibility. A lot of these customers had done traditional outsourcing or black box outsourcing, which provided them with a lot of cost benefit and also kind of sense of, outsourced a lot of operational activities on SLA basis. But, this locked the customers into a long-term contract where they lost flexibility, they lost control, and while the consumer needs and end user needs kept changing, they weren't able to easily change the terms of the contract, and they kept, got locked into that. And also emerging technologies needed different support models, alternatives that weren't addressed in the voluminous contract documents. So customers still, if you look at it now, customers still want high cost savings. They want a lot of flexibility, ability to access a large pool of resources and new technologies, ability to ramp up, ramp down, while at the same time want high control, would want the flexibility to change things based on the business needs, expect innovation from the provider, want to address cultural fit and people issues, and also want to have a higher visibility of what's happening, because you cannot control anything if you don't have the visibility. So what did we do? We created a new sourcing model that has a blend of these. I know it sounds magical, miracle. It is not. And is it fully done yet? Absolutely not. We are evolving? Absolutely yes, we are evolving. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what this new sourcing model talks about. And what is this co-managed IT? Where does it stand? It does provide higher cost savings, but more importantly, it provides a higher visibility for the customer, for our customers, and at the same time has clear accountabilities on us to, not just through IT-centric SLAs, but also business-focused SLAs. So we started working recently around how can we create SLAs around business process performance that's linked to just IT. So keeping the application on, keeping just those IT SLAs green wasn't the motive. And therefore, you'll notice that, and also this is not just a sales talk, because since it's an evolving model, you'll see various versions of it being implemented across our customers, and you can talk to any one of them out here. So if you move to the next slide, one of our largest customers had $1 billion overall savings through the engagement with us, and didn't come across with just one single change that we created. We focused on this, creating this co-managed IT, and focused on creating cost savings, not just through operational elements, not just through standardization, not just through automation and de-skilling and problem management, but also focused on transformational benefits which we baked into the contract as a guaranteed cost savings, if you may call. And we did work across several of these initiatives through the engagement, and most of them as a self-funding or as an HCL obligated savings and optimization program. All this at the same time while improving SLAs, while improving end-user experience and consumer experience. So this is the kind of right balance that we aim for in co-managed IT as a model. The next slide, let's pause for a minute and look at the questionnaire in front of you. So what kind of visibility do you currently have in your organization? What kind of cost savings do you get quarter on quarter, year on year? What kind of transformational impact has been baked into your current model? Either it's an in-sourced model or with your external partners and providers, or as a combination. If you quickly glance through this, you want to see what are the solution attributes that you already have in your organization. And now I want to go to a poll now, another poll from you to ask a simple question. Have you pictorially documented, represented your end-to-end business processes linked to your IT infrastructure? Do you have this in an easy, don't tell me a CMDB or a complicated enterprise architecture tool only a few people can use in the organization. I'm talking of easy to use, easy to explain end-to-end business processes in your organization. You can select one of them. Do you have them or you don't have them? Because, Frank, as you noticed, this is one of the key ways. If you don't understand the linkages between IT and business processes, there's no way IT can bring about improvements and optimizations in business processes and hence reduce costs.
I agree. So let's see. Wow.
There you go. But I'm surprised at the 8% that has yes there. So and maybe we can revisit this poll after I show the next slide in terms of what I meant by this end-to-end pictorially represented processes. So this is one big difference we bring in our co-managed IT. We talk about right from the business value chain down to business process diagrams, business process flows, and linking business functions to applications. And within applications, detail out all the incoming, outgoing interfaces, application to application dependencies, as well as application to server mapping, which all leads to, close to 70-odd reports that the IT organization can get. This is almost like an ERP for an IT organization where you can get an end-to-end visibility across the landscape and where business users, the architecture team, the IT support team can leverage this, and also and this not only helps in a richer understanding of our customers and their processes, but also helps in everyday, day-to-day incident problem management life cycle. A lot of this information, in fact, people will be wondering how the hell can this be done, because, organizations are continuously evolving. How can somebody spare this kind of a time to do it? We typically do quite a bit of it during the knowledge transfer process in transition, and we keep it live. We keep it current. We link this tool, we call it PRISM. We link this into the change control board, and to ensure that every change in the organization, be it in the process layer or in the technology layer, is back entered into the tool, and therefore you keep it current. You use it for problem solving. You use it for impact analysis of incidents, etc. So this is the kind of visibility we are talking about creating in the co-managed IT. Moving on to next slide, what therefore this does is it creates a whole new way of addressing incident lifecycle with full knowledge on business impact. So this business process-driven incident resolution also helps in identifying the underlying root cause. The root cause is sometimes, of course, is with the technology layer, but a lot of times it is with the business process layer itself, in the way the processes have been designed or configured, or in the application space, or in the infrastructure space, or in the network layer. So all this, being pictorially represented and not hidden in a, complex CMDB kind of a tool or an enterprise architecture tool, this therefore focuses sharply on enhancing end-user experience and therefore end-user satisfaction. And therefore, it's not about just root cause analysis and problem solving. It also focuses on, simplifying business processes and on ensuring, the team gets a full visibility. And it's not just the HCL team, but the customers, not just IT, but even the customers' business teams get an appreciation of what happens in IT. That's why we call it business-aligned IT inside co-managed IT. And if you go to the next slide, you will see, of course, nothing happens without a scientific collaboration. We all understand that most customers are having multiple partners, multiple vendors, and not a single IT service provider who does everything. And therefore, we realize the importance of ensuring what we call as a zero-blame game by creating several end-to-end processes, well-defined OLAs between various partners and vendors, and also went down to defining activity-level accountability, because nothing happens without accountability, and therefore, instead of zero-blame game being an art of managing with a couple of people, good managers, we kind of converted that into a science. And having a powerful and well-defined multi-vendor model is very essential, especially in a multi-partner environment, to ensure success of this co-managed IT. Let me now define a scenario of how all this comes together in a day-to-day life. So if we move to the next slide, it was supposed to be a kind of a build, but you can follow through with me. Start with the left top corner, which is what an application support team is supposed to do periodic incident analysis, resolve the incidents, and keep the business happy. And we don't stop there. Now that data on incidents and problems gets into Prism, and therefore we start identifying impacted applications. Now, we don't just stop there in solving applications problem. We also correlate that with the business processes and start identifying impacted business processes or sub-processes. And therefore, the knowledge, now you're talking of the same application support team, which was supposed to be resolving incidents day in and day out, now started focusing on analyzing business processes and what's going wrong. Why are these incidents happening every month end, every quarter end, every night? And therefore, they start trending selective business process KPIs. So if you're on SAP, you can use the Solutions Manager BPM. Otherwise, we bring in tools and also the My Dashboard Process Watch so that you can start monitoring business process KPIs. Now, this is a very interesting step. Once you get there, the team, which is the application support team, they start, thinking about why can't we improve these processes? What is going wrong? Their inquisitive nature leads to the same team creating new ideas. So these ideas are captured in what we call as value portal, and which is exposed to our customers who discuss with their business partners and start implementing those ideas. So when you saw that billion-dollar impact, or in quite a few customers, millions of dollars of cost savings have come in because the same application support team, which was just supposed to resolve incidents and problems, are now focusing on real business process issues and how can technology resolve those issues, and therefore becomes a very, very powerful model. And all this gets done at the same cost that you pay for an application support and maintenance. So nothing else has changed except that the value to the business has increased phenomenally. So moving on to the next slide, I want to, talk about a case study where this is currently being implemented. We've come across probably 2 phases of it. There are more phases to this, and that's where we started off with the entire whole application portfolio, mapping systems and business processes, and then we moved on to doing proactive IT, identifying business problems. We're using historical analysis, and also implemented the value portal, which started generating value ideas for different areas of the business. And then moving on to, this is the phase we are in now. We're getting into the whole business aligned IT, mapping business process KPIs. How can an application support team help, for example, identify parameters linked to out of stock of a product and prevent an out of stock in the product, not coming from a top-down multi-million-dollar DPR exercise, but from bottoms up, doing your routine maintenance and support of your application. How can you impact business processes? So that's the case study. Anybody who wants to understand more about it can write to me. I can introduce you to the customer on our journey, and we're still in the journey out there. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for today. Unless we can go on to Q&A now and take your questions.
Thank you, Vijay. My first question I have here has to do with who needs to be at the table to really have a productive discussion with regard to IT, business processes, if you will. I mean, this is beyond a traditional relationship and a traditional solution. I'm assuming that this isn't as simple as a discussion between you and the head of IT. So who do you typically recommend should be in the discussion at the early stages to help craft the desired output here?
When we launched this in 2007, we went asking this question. And therefore, we kind of put the cart in front of the horse by saying we need to have the following people on the table to have a meaningful conversation. And it was tough for the IT to bring those people to the table to discuss anything meaningful, especially in a scenario where, IT is an order taker, or IT has just started doing something good, or IT is viewed as a cost center. So we turned the whole thing upside down. We said, let's do a pull model. Let's start creating these alerts around business process KPIs and giving it to them. Because broadly speaking, head of IT, the VP of the business partner organization, VP of applications, they broadly know what are the things that are keeping the business awake at night. And therefore, we know broadly what those business process KPIs are. For example, CPG companies struggle around perfect order, forecast accuracy, out of stock, on time in full, etc. So these are industry standard KPIs which are not being measured or alerted on proactively. And therefore, we did a pull model. We implemented this in the back with the support of IT, started mapping business processes, not the entire end-to-end organization. Not all this happens overnight. So we went through in phases, started showing positive results, and we started drawing, process by process, business by business into this whole thing so that they get excited when they see results. So business, they have tons of things to do. They are supposed to sell their products, improve their products, market their products. So why bother them with all this plumbing work, if I may call, give them the end result and see how they use it. And that's how we went about doing it.
It makes sense. So my sense is for many, it may have been just as much of a challenge for them, right? It's a new type of thinking, if you will, a new approach.
That's true. And most CIOs we're working with are all facing this problem, because if they're not doing it, the business is going to someone else to get this done, or they're doing it themselves. So it kind of, it's not, it is complementary to the effort that is happening in the organization, except that out here, the IT support organization is taking the lead, because where does all the data of an enterprise flow through? It flows through the applications that are running. And who better than those people who are managing those applications to come up with, visibility parameters. So remember, when I started this whole thing, we started about what is the difference in this co-managed IT is the visibility. It's not about just IT process parameters being visible, which is application is available, servers are running well, and everything is green. It's about showing that value to the business process.
No, okay, fine, thank you. How receptive are most, let's say, prospective clients? In the world where, labor arbitrage still seems to be the solution for most. Do you find yourself wrestling a bit, trying to get them to think more broadly and more outcome-oriented?
Yes, we have already started seeing, not just in our existing contracts, but even in newer contracts, even third-party advisory organizations have started thinking about this. We still don't have a contractual mechanism to, just like an IT SLA-based mechanism, but there's one customer we're currently coming up with it, and we'll probably contractually sign up for it, and that will probably set the trend in the rest of the world of how can this be contractually committed, so that there is a buy-in of the customer as well, and there is a certain amount of obligation on them in order to provide and promote this idea.
Okay, and in a lot of your materials, you emphasize the ability for the client to retain control and visibility. Why do you stress that?
One of the basic, if you go back to traditional outsourcing, those multi-year contracts that have been signed, 90% of the CIOs I've spoken to in my career, all of them cried about their inability to change things quickly. They have to go through a large contractual procedure to make any change possible. And inevitably, that change means it's a change control procedure. It means more money than what they are currently paying. And fundamentally, because it's been a black box, they don't have visibility into what's exactly happening, what is the resource loading, how many people are engaged in their engagement, and what are they doing other than just incident resolution. I have a customer of mine where the basis support gets done from Czechoslovakia, somewhere in Vancouver, India, and somewhere in Manila, Philippines. And for the same incident, there are 4 people who log on in every 8 hours or so. You got to explain the whole thing over and again. And they wanted to make a change, and that change means a ton of more money, because the contractual, the 1,000-page document that they sign restricts them from doing it. Therefore, visibility to what is it that they have contracted for, visibility into what is operating becomes very impossible. And therefore, that's why we opened up our box and we said, let it be a transparent engagement, and because it gives our customers a higher control.
Okay, it makes total sense. Another question here popped up is, let's see, what kind of business KPIs do you manage through your IT services?
So I gave you an example in the CPG industry. We're talking about out of stock of a product. If you take a CPG, consumer good industry, either they overstock in a store if they have space, or which means they spend more inventory, with a lot of retailers going into vendor managed inventory. They have higher inventory costs, or they run out of the product. So how do you optimize that process? Everybody will tell you, yes, we have business processes. It's a age-old problem of optimizing inventory versus forecasting accuracy and having the perfect order, etc. But ask them the same question. How many of them are monitoring those process KPIs in real time or near real time from the data that's flowing in the process? Even empirical formulas, when they are monitored on real time or near real time, it gives them the respective alerts. It gives the regional sales guy an alert, a week in advance, few hours in advance, day in advance of what's going to happen, and therefore they can take corrective measures ahead of time rather than looking at a monthly report at the end of the month to know that something went out of stock on 15th of a month somewhere in the Northeast region. It's a good information, but they're not able to do anything with it, and therefore those are the kind of business process KPIs I'm talking about, and which essentially cannot be done with just IT alone. You got to do it IT in conjunction by mapping the sub-processes.
Okay, fine. Next question submitted here is, what time does it take to implement co-managed IT in a complex environment with multi-country, multiple applications, and language complexities? That's a handful there.
Handful. So it starts off, you start seeing benefits of this from probably 6 to 9 months after the transition period, and the full implementation can even take 2.5, 3 years. Look at it as a journey, not as I bought this tool and I implemented. It's not that easy. It's got to go sub-process by sub-process. It's got to go region by region. So I use a typical three-dimensional axis model. You can either take one country, do across business processes, or you take one business process, go across different countries. Depending on how the organization is structured, you can either go functional model, you can go application upwards, you can do business process downwards, or you can do region specific. Or, rather than going after the typical saying of, I've got this technology, let me try to see what problem can I solve, understand where in the organization is the fire, where are the problems, pick one of them and start implementing. So look at it as a evolution, not look at it as, I've got this co-managed IT tool or Prism as a tool, and here you go, 9 months from now, all problems are solved. That's not the way we look at it.
All right. No, that's a fair answer. I'm just curious, what do you see as, let me word this differently. What is your advice to those IT organizations out there that are still primarily focused on just getting cheaper bodies, if you will, and negotiating hourly rates, day rates, things along those lines? What are they leaving on the table?
They're leaving quite a bit, right? Because if you talk to a lot of organizations who have deployed this model, they are running at least 25-30% lower than what they were running earlier. So even those customers who did selective sourcing, used offshore, personnel, etc., from that cost base to this model, it does give them, so it does give IT cost benefits. So this is over and above the IT cost benefit that I'm talking about for the same spend that you have, for the reduced spend rather, that you have for running your IT application. So this is a double whammy, if I may call it. So you get both the benefits.
Okay, it sounds great. Just, I guess, a message to those of you listening here today. As Arlene, I believe, mentioned on the front end, a recording of this webinar in its entirety will be posted to outsourcing.com, and Arlene will get a link out to you if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, and you're welcome to do that. If any of you have any additional questions for Vijay, would like any more information on capabilities, case studies, etc., VJ's email was just up there, but there you go. Thanks, Arlene. How's that for real-time response? And you could drop VJ a note. Also, I believe, Arlene, keep me honest here, in the email that you will send as a follow-up will also be all the contact information?
That is correct, Frank.
All right, super. VJ, again, thank you. Appreciate your support sponsoring this webinar. Great case studies, great capabilities, and it's totally in line with our goal of connecting, I would say, forward-thinking organizations and solutions with our members. So again, thank you for the time and the investment.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Have a good day.
Goodbye.